I'm reviewing every MCU movie and TV show in chronological order until Avengers Doomsday is released, and this week we're watching Thor The Dark World. I know the internet and majority of people that saw this movie initially thought that this was the worst that we ever got of Thor. We were wrong. So after the events of Avengers and the Battle of New York, we're following up with Thor as he is still fighting for good across the different realms. And it's funny because now it seems like he's worthy more than ever, and he doesn't want to take the throne. He doesn't want to be king. He wants to still keep his, ear to the ground and help out whoever needs help, and he feels like he can't really do that from the throne. And then also we're following up with Loki and the consequences of his attack on Earth. Now a new villain comes into this mix. Now technically it's an old villain, basically older than time from what they say, called the Dark Elves. And what they want to do is basically put the whole universe in darkness. So get rid of the sun, get rid of any kind of light, and I guess that's the kind of world that they're used to and how they'll thrive. Now this is pretty much the plot of the whole movie, but they do introduce an infinity stone, which is the ether, which isn't a stone. It's like, how Thor says, it's like a sludge. So let me get into what worked here. I think that in hindsight, looking back on this movie, on this rewatch, it's everything that I wanted, from a Thor movie. You're following up to see what he's up to, what he learned, how did he grow? And they do it really well here to where I actually started to like Thor more as a character from this movie. He's seasoned, he's wiser, and he's humble. And he's just more well-rounded. Everything that you loved about Thor in the first movie continues there, and then you love even more things about him. Now Loki's role in this movie just kind of further proves that he's beyond just a one-time villain, and he's beyond even just being called an MCU villain. His character is, greater than that, title. He's given more depth in this movie as well. From what we've seen in Thor 1, he was kind of coming off as just a jealous brother, someone that's envious of the throne, that he feels betrayed by Odin because he didn't tell him his true heritage. And in this movie, it really shows the family dynamic where Odin is kind of looking at Loki as like, damn, you're a blemish on this reputation that I have as king. You're going to spend the rest of your days in jail. Thor is pretty much over Loki's shit. But their mom, Frigga, still has love for him, and, it feels for him. She doesn't want to see one of her kids go to jail forever. And also, Loki, as much as he comes off as like a heartless asshole, he loves his mom. I mean, even if you're a villain, you love your mom, right? Anthony Hopkins, he does a great job as Odin again. And I think it was really cool to see the dynamic kind of shift between Odin and Thor comparatively from Thor 1 into, the Dark World. Because initially, Thor was headstrong, ready to go to war, not really giving a fuck. And Odin was like, yo, chill out. We need to do things the right way. And now when Odin is put in a position where he's like, nah, I got to get my get back. I got to fuck these people up. Thor is trying to calm his dad down, saying, yo, this is not how we do it. This isn't wise. You're not thinking straight. You're acting no better than our enemy. And, Anthony Hopkins just kills it with the dialogue and how he delivers things. And, he just does a great job. I love Anthony Hopkins. I got a big soft spot for Anthony Hops. Now getting into things where I didn't really like was just the location of this movie. Going back to Earth, yeah, it's interesting and I get it, kind of connects us with Jane Foster, Eric Selvig, Darcy, but I don't necessarily think that's where the story should have took place, and it just seems too fucking convenient, to be honest with you. The convergence takes place on Earth. Of all places, come on. I think if they would have just put it on a different planet, to where, I don't know, we kind of just see Thor in a different light, to where he's not just going to Earth and it's not just on Asgard, but if they put it on a planet with, a whole other, people, and you kind of just see Thor really showing that he's a hero across the universe, I think that would have gave this a little bit more of weight to it. I mean, they still could have connected Jane Foster and Eric Selvig for the science part of it, but I just think putting it on Earth was a little bit bland. It was just a little too predictable for me. When it comes down to the Dark Elves, it wasn't the greatest villain, to be honest with you. You really don't care. we weren't introduced to this. It wasn't like it was a reoccurring character or, you know, group of villains. I just really didn't have that feeling of like, oh, I hate these It really just got to the point where it's like, I know Thor's gonna win. I know he is. I'm not really concerned about that. I just don't think that the Dark Elves really had much to offer in this movie. We were wrong about Thor The Dark World. It wasn't a bad Thor movie at all. They built up Thor very differently this go around here. And I owe this movie a huge apology, and you do too. You know, the stakes don't necessarily feel that big, but the losses do. And sometimes that really does make up for a story. Now look, Thor losing his mom was heartbreaking. But you know what else was heartbreaking? Was Loki losing the only person that probably loved him and still believed that there was some good in him. And also adding to what made this great was the dynamic with Thor and Loki in this movie. It really delivered on showing them fighting together and how different they are in battle, but what they bring to the table, you know, their bickering and shit like that was authentic. It felt authentic. It felt like real brothers bickering.
I think you missed a Connor. Shut up.
It was great. And sharing the motive to avenge their mother was dope as fuck. I like that it showed these guys in this light to where Loki's like, nah, you know, you give me a chance, I'm doing this for moms. And Thor, same thing. I mean, his, you know, reason is a little bit nobler. He wants to save the whole, you know, universe. But I like that they share that, you know, affection for their mom, and they wanted to get their get back. I like that. And, you know, when Thor truly believes that Loki has died, he, you know, honors his legacy. He tells who he thinks is fucking Odin, but it's actually Loki, that, you know, Loki died with honor. You know, he did a noble thing. He made a noble sacrifice. And, you know, I respect that. It was kind of just fucked up when you find out, well, you know, Loki's not dead. And lastly, it really just answers what happens after the Avengers. You know, what's going on? How did they grow? And what's their next mission? And how did they improve from here? That's what this movie did. Now, for parents, if you're wondering if this is appropriate to watch with your kids, yeah, this is a great movie to watch with your kids. It really just shows a family dynamic, you know, and something that you could take away from it. Family relationships can be complicated, right? But the love is always still there. You know, really highlighting the dynamic that the whole family has with Loki. It's like, damn, this guy has messed up, but we still love him, and we still choose to love him, and we still choose to also trust him. And even if you mess up, you can still choose to do the right thing like Loki did. Kind of. Now, last but not least, where do I rank Thor The Dark World in the MCU? So I'm giving this a B tier. It's better than the first Thor, surprisingly. Now, you probably are gonna disagree with me on that. And I get it too. The story was a bit bland, but honestly, I feel like the characters made up for it. And overall, this movie pushed the MCU to continue its overall story. It did good. But again, if you guys disagree with this ranking, let me know. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a like. And if you want more MCU Mondays like this one, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And hey, am I wrong on this? Is Thor The Dark World actually still kind of shitty in your mind, or is it pretty good? All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.